For the moment, we're shifting to the Pacific. China wants to build a military base there. And Beijing is working on a deal with the Solomon Islands. We told you about this story last week. The neighborhood is alarmed. Australia says it is worried. New Zealand is gravely concerned. And frankly, they have reason to be worked up. If China builds a base, the Pacific would be militarized. There is strong backlash against the agreement. And the Solomon Islands is not pleased. In fact, the government has taken offense to these comments. They find this criticism insulting. Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare is outraged. This is what he told his parliament.
The security treaty, Mr. Speaker, is pursued at the request of Solomon Islands government. We are not pressured. We are not pressured in any way by our new friends. And there is no intention whatsoever, Mr. Speaker, to ask China to build a military base in Solomon Islands. Goodness. We're insulted. We're insulted by such unfounded stories.
We're insulted by such unfounded stories, he says. Sogavare is referring to this document. This is a draft of the proposed deal with China. It was leaked last week. And we told you about it on this show. And going by this draft, there is no ambiguity. It says Chinese ships can make stopovers in the Solomon Islands and Chinese forces can be deployed here. But Sogavare insists that China is not building a base. So has the draft changed? Well, that he won't say. The Prime Minister is not sharing details. All he says at the moment is that the pact is ready to be signed. Same with China. They're bullish on this plan.
Who is sending military planes and warships to the doorstep of other countries all the time, seriously threatening the sovereign security of the countries concerned? Who is building militarized cliques that bring the risk of nuclear proliferation to the Pacific Ocean? And who is creating an atmosphere of tension, provoking bloc confrontation, and casting a shadow on regional peace and stability? The international community can make its own judgment. And the people of the Solomon Islands and the Pacific Island countries can also see it very clearly. No attempt to disrupt or undermine the mutually beneficial cooperation between China and the Pacific Island countries will succeed.
So China is backing the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands. He denies being influenced by Beijing. But his track record tells a very different story. Under his leadership, Chinese influence has grown rapidly in the Solomons. Sogavare came to power in 2019 for a fourth time, and since then his foreign policy has been distinctly pro-China. The Solomon Islands first severed diplomatic ties with Taiwan. A 36-year-long relationship was broken. Then they switched allegiances to China. And it wasn't a smooth switch. China allegedly bribed lawmakers to abandon Taipei. How do we know this? The first claims were made by Taiwan, but soon lawmakers from the Solomons also started speaking out, like Daniel Suidani. He is the premier of Maliata. In 2019, he made a big claim. He said that he was approached by someone from the Chinese government. He was offered cash. He says he refused the money and refused to vote to dump Taiwan. 2 years later, he was made to pay for that decision. Suidani needed funds for a brain surgery. An appeal was made to the Prime Minister Sogavare. The request was turned down, and this lawmaker had to go to Taiwan for treatment. This is what he said later, and I'm quoting. What happened in terms of the switch is not clear, but there is something going on between China and the Solomons that makes them switch without consulting with the people of the nation. Well, he had a point, because the people of the nation were not happy with the switch to China. They showed their anger. In November last year, violent protests broke out. Protesters converged in the capital city. There was violence outside the parliament. Almost the entire Chinatown was destroyed. The protesters even tried to get to the Prime Minister's residence. They failed. So they decided to go after a building that the Prime Minister owns. It was set on fire. The anger against China and the Solomon Islands is obvious. But Sogavare refused to take any lessons from his past. The damages from the violence last year ran into millions of dollars. What will be the price of a security pact with China? Possibly the sovereignty of the Solomon Islands. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.